Hello, Rena.
Hey, Dr. Bach, we get to connect again.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Welcome everyone to OI Chat. And let me just make sure I'm on mute on my, I think I am. Okay, sorry. Welcome to OI Chat with Rena K and myself, Dr. Bakho. And today we're following up. The title of the talk of the title is What is an Impulse? We're following up on last week. Um, Someone made a comment on our content. Greg, thank you for the comment. I'll show the comment and I'll read it in a moment. The context is that we were discussing last week. The title was When Can You Trust Your Impulses, or something to that effect. When can you trust your impulses, your inclinations to act? And I ended up saying never, period. And there was context around that. And part of that never was that purely from impulse without any further context, you can never trust it. It's not rational to trust it. And gut feel, purely gut feel, if you're using that as to mean impulse or to be a form of impulse, I suggest you can't trust it. And I said, in some cases, people refer to gut feel acting on gut instinct when in fact they were appealing to reason. I gave the example from Reddit. This girl said a guy was treating her poorly on a date, and she said she had the gut feeling to end the date and leave. And then she asked on Reddit for other people's opinions and whether they supported her. And then everyone said, "Yeah, go with your gut feeling, go with your gut instinct, brava." And I thought, no, she was making observations, and there was rational thinking there. I mean, he's treating her poorly. It may not be very complex rational thinking. It doesn't have to be math problems, but just this guy's treating me poorly. I'm not into that. I don't like that. So I feel like ending the date. So it's not just, well, my gut just told me to end the date. And just from that one datum, the rational thing to do is to end it. There was information and there was reasoning. So one point there I wanted to say is that in many cases, when people say they're following their gut instinct or impulse or feeling, and when they mean that positively, they are secretly appealing to reasoning without giving it due credit. That was one point I made. And then Greg commented on that point, I believe. I'm going to share, I pasted the comment in PowerPoint. Let me just read it. Thank you, Greg. And this is public, so I felt fine to paste it here. It's already on my YouTube channel publicly. Um, Greg says, love it, guys, at 27 minutes. Yes, this is something I've also said previously. What you need is stronger and better constructs to deal with more and more intuitive information, which is actually what you're presenting in this discussion. Often when people give examples of intuition, what they're displaying funnily is actually the depth and complexity of the constructs they use to organize intuitive information. Parenthesis, raw information, collection of all the stuff, impulses, etc., that come into us, close parenthesis. And often those constructs are too simplistic. Thank you for the discussion. This is one of the best examples of in the moment deep meta thinking I've witnessed. Uh, Continuing on Greg's part, so the discussion should actually be about how you can organize your internal thinking slash processing in order to properly differentiate between all of the impulse like information. And then I made a quick comment and reply to him on YouTube. Uh, I didn't put a lot of thought into it, but this is what just came out of me at the time. I said, yes, differentiate and integrate in order to arrive at action decision. Okay, so um, I think there are many directions I could go, you could go, anyone could go from this content, many important topics. relating to epistemology, how we know, how to arrive at action. Um, and we could talk about it specifically from an organic intelligence perspective, like thinking about what does organic intelligence have to say here, or how does this relate to organic intelligence, or we could think about it independently. I have one idea I'm going to go with, but I wanted to check in with you, Rena, to see if you want to make any comments first. Yeah.
So I'm actually curious about what you are thinking. I'll just deposit a little bit of what I'm thinking. Is one, Greg uses both the word intuition and the word impulses. I think those are some things, and then he uses it in terms of intuitive information, and then he uses the phrase impulse-like information. So I think there's some clarification that can happen with that. And then how that's related to constructs and his use of the words constructs and what he's meaning by that. So I think those are just some things that I thought would probably have to be laid out for our listeners to get a sense of where this is going.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that. Okay. Um, my impulse in the moment is, instead of deep mining the particulars of Greg's content, which we may get to today or later, maybe another day. Right off the bat, I'll say, I feel like bringing in some organic intelligence. Like I'm trying to think about, from an organic intelligence perspective, what might be said here about the content overall. Crap, Brenna, there's too much in my brain. It's impossible. It's impossible. Okay, here's where I am right now. Last week, okay, this actually does get to Gray, like what is an impulse, what is an intuition, what is a construct, what is information, like taxonomizing all that. This is getting there. So last week, I understood impulse, and I think you were using it with me, to mean an inclination to act. Like I have an impulse to leave the date, I have an impulse to stay in the date. Let me just give a few more very easy examples. I have an impulse to eat ice cream, I have an impulse to take a walk, I have an impulse to check my phone. So just ordinary garden actions. An impulse is an inclination to act. Now, I thinking about what organic intelligence is, I wonder, I'm going to lay out an idea. I'm not saying I have thought about it a lot. I'm not saying Steve agrees. Okay, here's an idea. An impulse is anything that the attention notices. This is off the cuff in the moment, okay? An impulse is anything that the attention notices that's coming up to the attention. It could be, it would include an inclination to act. I feel like going for a walk. I feel like sitting. I feel like ice cream. I feel like not something else. It could include any isoma element, a thought that occurs to you. I wonder how many tomatoes there are in this garden. That's totally random. Whatever thoughts. It's an impulse in the sense that your attention noticed it, and in that moment, your attention went to it. It could be an image. I have an image of popcorn. I have an image of going for a run. Your attention goes to that. It could be a sensation. I have pain or pleasure or buzziness or tingling somewhere, and my attention goes to that. It could be an emotion. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling angry. It could be orientation. My attention goes to something in the environment. It could be you're thinking about what to do with your body. It could be an action decision that comes after a lot of thought. It could be an action impulse that comes with no thought. It could be the attraction to do some thinking. It could be the attraction to veg out and not think. So I'm wondering, from an organic intelligence perspective, because organic intelligence focuses on eventually being so nuanced and aware of your experience that any phenomena could potentiate goodness into the future, like a thought or an image could potentiate a sensation, could potentiate an impulse to action, could potentiate you're going to take up piano playing or karate or something. So I wonder if there's merit from an organic intelligence perspective to think of impulse as anything, no matter how subtle,
Hmm.
that the attention notices.
Hmm.
That's what an impulse is. And I wonder if I've all I also have had the question, you know how a standard formulation of organic intelligence of auto organization is you're increasing your capacity to process information and intensity. And I've often wondered what exactly is information? And that would be any isoma. So maybe information is the same as impulse. I'm really thinking in the moment. I'm not sure where exactly I'm going, okay? But impulse is information, is the phenomena of consciousness. It's all impulse in a granular sense because your attention is going there at that time. And then a desire to act would just be a particular form of impulse, maybe more intense or more grosser ones that most people think of in day to day. But anything that the attention notices would be an impulse. Okay, I feel like I've repeated myself way
Okay.
too much, but yeah, just
Okay. All
yeah.
right. Okay. So this is my question with that.
Okay.
Is then what differentiates an impulse from anything else? So what was interesting is in your description as you're doing it, I was first thinking, okay, an impulse as being what comes to you and comes into your awareness, like involuntary. Like at first you were describing everything that was involuntary. And so the images, the even the thoughts, the a motor movement, a preparation for motor movement, and in a sense that would make sense. And then you also included the option to think, right? So now you also included an impulse, the voluntary, moving your awareness in a certain direction and choosing to engage in some kind of rational thought. At that point, then I go, oh, well, now what differentiates impulse from any other experience of the human being?
Okay. You had me at what differentiates impulse from anything else. You had me at the very like the first 10 words out of your mouth. I thought, oh shit, I take back everything I just said. I think I just wasted everyone's time. I wonder if I just was completely I said absolutely nothing, even though I put a lot of thought into it. So I think your question, what Bach, if you understand impulse to mean anything that the attention notices, what's the point of that? Why define it that way? How does it differ from anything else? Nice, you got me. I mean, I feel your question. So one reason I think that with so maybe my definition of impulse there was empty and unmotivated. It has to be thrown in the trash. Um, because there's nothing that would contrast against impulse. So then I would say setting aside organic intelligence, coming from my perspective of being pro reason, an impulse would be anything that pulls you in some direction. And then it's up to your reason to decide, do I want to send this email or not, send the text or not, have gluten and dairy or not? Okay, so that I buy. Now, why did what would be in favor of my understanding impulse to mean anything in the conscious experience? I don't have an answer to what it contrasts against, so I'm sorry about that. I will say, um, okay. One idea in organic intelligence. I may not be answering your question directly or satisfactorily, but here I go. One idea in organic intelligence is that your thinking process or what you think is like a bona fide thinking process is actually just determined by a prior movement within the biology. So, for example, Man, I feel like I'm underwater here, but I'm gonna keep going. So I apologize to my audience if I end up saying stuff and I'm not sure what I'm saying. But okay, here's an example. Uh, a guy is thinking about whether he wants to be a father. Should I have children or not? Like, let's say his wife is on board, and then he's thinking, do I want, or he has the idea to have children, and now he's engaged in a pros and cons. Like, do I want children? How much do they cost? And blah blah blah. So there's a lot of thinking across days or weeks, and then many people think, well, that thinking feeds into the eventual decision whether or not to have children or not, right? He's thinking, and then he'll decide eventually whether to have children or not. One idea in organic intelligence is in some or many cases, you've already decided you're going to have children. Your biology has already decided it. And then the process of thinking about whether to have children is just how it's going to eventually reach the point of having children. Let's say your biology decided to have children. You're going to get to that conclusion. It's just that you don't really know it yet. You think you're genuinely thinking about whether to have children or not, but all you're thinking is just going to go in that direction. That's a point you get into, like, what's the nature of predictive regulation, but there's an idea in organic intelligence. I'm not saying I think it's right or how frequent it is, but that thinking and cognitive processing is somehow illusory or not as efficacious or pointful as you might think, as you, Bach, the pro reason guy, may think, because your biology has already decided something, and the rest is just how it's going to get there.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how I may not even be answering your question at all, but it's generally what I've thought of in the moment.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
I've got two thoughts.
Okay.
Maybe they will rescue you, maybe not. I don't know. So one thought, and this is not a thought out thought because I was actually listening to you.
Thank you.
The word impulse, if you think of awareness and to be able to have awareness, that requires some potentiation of an electrical impulse in the system. Right. So now I'm taking impulse to the physical level.
Yeah.
Right. That if we were to describe impulse as some kind of potentiation of an electrical signal, and all awareness would require that, then you could say, well, impulse is everything. I don't know if that will save us or not,
Um,
but that's one thought that came to mind with what you were saying.
and don't worry about us. I mean, I may say things you disagree with, of course. So it's not. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm not saying this as an
Yeah.
us, but
Oh,
I'm
okay. Okay.
just
Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah.
curious about,
Uh,
and I've got another thought, but I'll start with
okay.
that one.
So, um, okay. Let me go back to Bach. Why did you offer the definition of impulse as anything that the attention notices? Here's an answer. From an organic intelligence perspective, everything is potentially relevant. So organic intelligence would contrast against neutral mindfulness. Just, you're mindfully observing your thoughts and feelings and images neutrally in a detached way. It's just you just let the thoughts and feelings stream through, and mindfulness forever. Um, According to organic intelligence, anything could be really potent. The weakest signal from thought or sensation could be potent. So it's important to know that anything that the attention notices, if I have an image of cotton candy, if I suddenly notice a hummingbird, it's not, you can't assume it's just irrelevant distraction, and that what's important is something else, even if you have a certain purpose. Okay, in certain contexts, like you're doing the MCAT exam, or you're doing some exam that's timed, you have 2 hours for the exam, obviously then you got to focus. But I'm talking about just when you have time and there's no urgent situation. Anything that arises in attention could be potent for learning about pleasure, feeling pleasure, and moving towards capacity growth. So anything that arises in attention could be a pointer to action, like go there. Oh, pay attention to that melody that just came up. Pay attention to that thought. Understanding impulse to mean that which kind of nudges you towards a direction. Anything in conscious experience can, and they're all presumptive candidates for for paying attention to. And I want to apologize. I feel like I'm saying nothing, but I'm not trying to say nothing. I assure you, it's, it's not my goal to
Well,
be empty. But
right. So if we go back to the initial,
yeah,
like how we defined it last week, impulse
yeah.
is an inclination towards action. I think another definition, like how the word is used, is any kind of feeling or desire that has not yet been subjected to any kind of rational thought. That
Oh,
that is also an impulse. And in which case, either one, so if you consider thinking, like choosing where your awareness goes, a form of action, and if you think of any kind of feeling or desire that's not yet been subjected to rational thought, you could say that anything that comes up in the isoma then would be an impulse.
yes, I'm with you. And if we're using impulse to mean anything that arises that has not yet been processed by rational thinking, I follow that definition, and I would advocate rational thinking. And from an organic intelligence perspective, there's an idea in organic intelligence that, well, in organic intelligence, there's somewhat of a negative view of rationality, or a kind of a, like, it has to be limited in some way. It's a tool of distortion, or it's limiting you, and often you just have to go with impulse. That's the right direction. So if you're using impulse to mean something that arises that's not processed by rationality, I would regard impulse as, you shouldn't act on impulse, not
Right.
pure, because it has to be processed. But
Because,
I
go ahead.
but I think that I'm still half apologizing to you and to my audience, because I'm juggling multiple things. When organic intelligence says that sometimes you just have to act spontaneously and randomly, like you're trying to think, like, should I do this or that? But then you have a random impulse to go drive to a movie theater, and you never go to a movie theater. I'm First of all, I support that, like spontaneous random action, spontaneous random impulse. But even in those cases, there's an implicit basic rationality check, because you're already cherry picking cases where the impulse is fine to act on. But if you play a different game, like my game is, I don't know anything about mushrooms. I'm going to go into a forest, and the game is, the first mushroom you see, eat it. That's what I'm going to do. I guarantee you, even the most reason-hating organic intelligence people, even people who like who have a negative view of rationality, will say, no, you shouldn't play the game. Eat whatever mushroom you want. You have to know whether it's poisonous. So in okay, I the people who say, yeah, you got to be spontaneous and go with your gut and go with impulse and disinhibit and not go into logic and thinking and reasoning, I bet you won't sustain your position if you just confront the non-cherry picked cases.
Mhm.
Because then you'll think, no, you have to reality check, because if that mushroom's going to kill you, don't act on impulse. So I feel like I'm just circling back to what
Yeah.
I,
Okay.
yeah,
So I'm gonna
yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna jump in.
no,
So there's something that we haven't addressed yet that is part of this whole conversation.
okay,
And it's you're kind of dancing around it a little bit. And this idea that there's already baked into the examples, or there's already baked into our impulse some kind of rationality, or the idea that anything that you're not really making decisions, your biology's already chosen for you. All of that is based on the idea that there are things that can get automatized in our systems. There are thoughts that become automatized. There are actions that become automatized. There is like the behaviors. There's images. Like there's these another way of talking about it is conditioning. Some people use that word, but we don't have to think about every single thing because things are automatized. So if I have an impulse while I'm driving to go to the movie theater, well, there's all kinds of things already baked into that, which is I'm in a car. I'm driving. The movie theater is 3 blocks away, not 200 miles away. There's a whole bunch of things that you don't have to really reason it out consciously, and yet reasoning is already happening. It's being based on reason. So there can be things that are, we're getting information, we're perceiving information, we're grasping information, we're grappling with information that is already been, processed unconsciously or say maybe subconsciously that's in an automatic form. We just aren't really yet aware that we're doing the conscious reasoning.
Okay, I follow you, and thank you for saying all that. I appreciate that. Now, one point I think the central point you made was that in our impulses, there's reasoning baked in, but it's just so obvious and fast sometimes. I mean, that you don't think of it as reasoning, but it's there. I mean, the movie theater is not 200 miles away, right? Okay. How would you deal with the following? I'm going to offer something. In organic intelligence, there's a huge emphasis, at least in session work, on being spontaneous. That organic intelligence coaches, myself, yourself, we need to be spontaneous and instinctive in our sessions because we there's because what's happening in a session is too complex to be able to consciously rationally think about, so we have to go on impulse, like whatever comes to mind I'll say it even if it sounds weird. And um the contrast there is therapeutic approaches that are heavily focused on the therapist or coach doing a lot of cognitive conscious top-down processing, like cognitive behavioral therapy. Would you say that the spontaneity and impulse in social interaction, organic intelligence style, is still rational, or it's just rationality of a different form?
I
Or, uh,
I would say
yeah,
so in some ways we have to also then like contrast this with like a more mystical
yeah,
view,
yeah. Damn
right?
it.
That I mean, so the because that's really the contrast here. So the mystical view, or another word that people might use is just like on a whim, right? Just our whim is to do something.
May I?
And all of that suggests that there's like some kind of information coming into our perceptual field that we have no conscious awareness, and it's influencing us, and it's based on like how we're going to make this decision. So there's going to be some kind of revelation, or I have some, like
Yeah,
that's happening. That's not what's being suggested, I think, in organic intelligence, by the idea that as a coach you want to disinhibit and allow
right,
things to
right,
come
right.
up.
Okay.
Fundamentally on the substrate of that is that, oh, your system is organized in such a way that it's actually going to notice on a seemingly unconscious level, but really that seemingly unconscious, and seemingly is the important word, that seemingly unconscious level is actually loaded with information, whether you can consciously describe the information or not. So why is it that sometimes I might throw out an example and say something about, Oreo cookies, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever, and make a joke about Oreo cookies. And the client just goes, "Oh my gosh. Like, how did you know? That was exactly the thing I was thinking about and I was, grappling with before our session, was whether I should eat the Oreo cookies or not. Like, how did I know that?" right? And so some people would say, oh, that came from the ether somehow in a mystical way. And I would say, no, there's some way that I've got information, that I've picked up information. I just might not be able to tell in that moment why consciously why I made that choice to give that example and not Doritos, say, right?
Yeah.
And so my sense is there's actually perception happening. It's just at a level that we may not be fully conscious of. And that organic intelligence is encouraging us to disinhibit so that a broader range of information might be available to us, not just what's made it up to the level of consciousness. So it's trying to
Mm.
include the unconscious information. And I'm saying that automatized in the unconscious system is all kinds of rational information. There's a lot of times there's a lot of irrational information too, but that's another conversation. But it's based on that rational information that's been automatized on the unconscious level, out of which we are getting this information and why we can disinhibit.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing out that the fundamental contrast from reason is not spontaneous impulse, but from irrational methods of obtaining knowledge. So
Mhm.
thank you for saying that. Like, what's behind the fence? Reason says go look behind it instead of pray or ask God or close your eyes and just a cow came up to my mind. There must be a cow behind the fence. There has to be, you have to look behind the fence to know that's
What
reason.
actually is
The
behind.
act, right, right, right. Um, you're saying that disinhibition and spontaneity unlock information that would not be available if you're doing a lot of top-down processing, right? So it's necessary for your rationality to be able to to unlock information that could be fruitful for your decision making.
Mhm.
Yes. And from an organic intelligence perspective, not only so disinhibition is important, spontaneity and instinct, maybe I'll put instinct in quotes, but a spontaneity is important for unlocking information. Also, orientation and pleasure, the two fundamentals, because that increases the chances that the information will be positively potent for you, right?
For sure.
Um, why did I get all wonky today? That's anyway, we'll figure that out later. Um, we're already on our time. I feel like you held us up today. Thank you.
Well,
Did you have comments on Greg? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, I think all of this is related to what Greg was
Yeah, let me
saying,
share.
because ultimately, I think what he was saying is that we have to have how do we organize our thinking in such a way that what becomes automatized in our unconscious, so what becomes standard automatic out of which we are making decisions, that is wise, right? So that there is a basis of the internal thinking processing process that will allow us to, as you just mentioned, make more, to have the greater likelihood of making decisions or acting in a way that is in the direction of our life, right? Like our well-being. And so, because ultimately, what's this all for? This is all for enhanced life. And so, I the what organic intelligence has been and what we've been promoting is the idea that being oriented and well oriented and the pursuit of pleasure, and we could even say rational pleasure, but that'll be in another conversation. But the pursuit of that is in alignment with what is rational, which is going to be what is going to help our life improve and survive. That Greg is right. We that is a process, and that's not automatic, and we want to help do that. And so in organic intelligence, we're saying, or orientation, the following the principle of pleasure, having that stabilized in the biology, all of that is going to help that automaticity provide us better information for our lives.
I agree. Thank you. And I agree with the content of what you're saying. In the moment, I'm thinking I agree with it. And I'm also where I'm also concerned with presenting organic intelligence accurately, whether I agree with organic intelligence or not in some way, but I want to present it accurately. And one concern I have here is that I don't think Steve, the founder of organic intelligence, so he's the authority on organic intelligence, I don't think he would be pro rationality or reason. So describing organic intelligence as serving rationality and placing the pursuit of pleasure under rationality, I think that's correct and good. I just don't know that Steve would endorse rationality without a lot of qualifications. And so I don't know if I agree with what you're saying about life and truth. I don't know, but I don't know how much you would agree with it as a presentation of organic intelligence. That's my
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
there may be a way that I am conflating
I mean, no, yeah,
some ideas, and I don't know either because I've never had this
right.
conversation.
So
So I with Steve or others even in
yeah,
organic intelligence. So
I,
I actually don't know what would be the official teaching along those lines. I what I've seen is I think some of the teaching is unclear. So I see it's stated in one way positively and then
yeah,
stated
no, I'm
another way
with you.
negatively. And so I actually think it's just a lack of clarity. And so where it would fall ultimately, I don't actually know.
Thank you. And I realized that in this conversation with you, and I apologize again to everyone for getting a little wonky, but that's just free association, right? You just kind of roll with it and see do the best you can. But I think I was juggling both what do I think is true, think about that Bach, and then what would organic intelligence say? And I was getting confused between the two projects sometimes as I was speaking. And yes, in organic intelligence, sometimes you get an advocacy of reason has failed us or rationality has failed us, and we have to go to mysticism. And then sometimes you get, well, when you're oriented and in pleasure, you have more intentional control, you're less hijacked by emotion, and you're able to process information more efficiently. So there's some lack of clarity that would be good to be resolved. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking before I say anything I really think I shouldn't say. Um, I enjoyed this time with you, Rena, and I hope the audience got something from it. I hope we've addressed Greg's comments in some way, especially you, Rena. I think you have. Um,
We'll find out. We'll
we'll
find out
find
if Greg has a
out.
comment or if anybody else has a comment. And so, just to say that we welcome comments. So,
Yeah,
if
we
you want
welcome
to
that.
put
Yeah.
things in YouTube or if you want to email us, our emails I think are in the description, and we're happy to engage
Yes. Yes.
in conversation that way. We won't necessarily put your comments up if you want to engage with us and don't want us
Yeah.
don't want to be the subject of one of our talks, then we will find a way to do that. So, don't be afraid of communicating with us.
Thank you, everyone. There will be links in the description to learn more about each of us. You can reach out to Rena at richergrowth.com to learn more about her OI informed courses on healing from shame and for individual session work. And you can reach out to me at bachho.com for individual session work. Thank you